Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to Watchcasted. Here is my ugly mug again because I am still running an experiment. But today we are doing another comparison video because I found that much more interesting than just doing a standalone review. When you look at watches not in a vacuum, it becomes much more interesting in my opinion. So I figured I would do a comparison that pretty much everybody has done, the Black Bay 36 versus the Rolex Explorer 1. So let's go ahead and jump to the overhead camera and start the comparison. And here they are right next to each other, the Rolex Explorer 1. This is the 14270, and the Tudor Black Bay 36. This is the modern rendition. I should point out the Tudor is about half the price of the modern Rolex Explorer. As far as the vintage examples, I don't know what you can expect because it seems as though the prices vary quite a lot. But as far as modern renditions, the Black Bay 36 is about half the price of the modern Explorer. But with that being said, now let's talk about the specs and measurements of these watches. The Black Bay 36 comes in 25 grams heavier at 125 grams. The Rolex Explorer is 100 grams. I should point out that the bracelet on the older Explorer is quite different from the modern, so it may be more comparable with a modern version. The diameter of both of the watches is 36 millimeters. The Black Bay 36 has a lug-to-lug of 43.4 millimeters, while the Explorer 1 has a lug-to-lug of 43 millimeters. The lug width of the Tudor is 19 mil, while the Rolex is 20 millimeters. And again, I should note that the modern Rolex Explorer does have a 19 mil lug width, so it's going to be the exact same between the Tudor and the modern Rolex. Then as far as the thickness, the Tudor comes in at 10.2 millimeters, while the Rolex Explorer comes in at 11.2 millimeters. But as you can see, the Tudor looks quite a bit thicker because that mid case is very slab-like, while the Rolex has a much thinner, much more petite-looking mid case. Also, since we're looking at them right now, both of the watches have screw-down crowns, and they are both signed, look really great. The Tudor does have a bit larger of a crown, so it is easier to manipulate. And I should also note that the Black Bay 36 has a little bit of a crown stem, so it does stick out from the case a little bit. And when they are side by side, you can really tell how much bigger the crown for the 36 is. Then as far as the crystals, both of them are going to be sapphire. The Tudor Black Bay has a flat sapphire, and if I'm not mistaken, it does have anti-reflective undercoating. The vintage Rolex has more of a domed sapphire, and I don't think that it has any anti-reflective coating. As the camera goes out of focus. Then as far as the dials, both of these are black, and I would classify them as lacquer black because they are very deep, very rich, and a bit reflective, kind of like a piano finish. The handset on the Tudor watch is going to be the signature Tudor snowflake style hands, while the handset on the Rolex is going to be the Mercedes style hands. The bracelet on the Tudor feels extremely robust, and it uses screw links for adjustment. The Rolex, on the other hand, has a very jingly and jangly bracelet, but it does also use screw links for adjustment. The clasp on the Tudor is going to be a milled clasp, so it feels really robust. It also has this fold-over security keeper, and it only has 3 holes of micro adjustment there. The clasp on the Rolex is going to be a pressed clasp, so it doesn't feel as robust or durable, but this really takes the cake in terms of micro adjustment because it has 7 positions. Then when we start looking at some more technical specs, the Tudor has a water resistance of 150 meters, while the Explorer has a water resistance of 100 meters. The movement in the Tudor is the Tudor Caliber 600, I believe, which is essentially just the ETA 2824. This has a power reserve of 38 hours and a beats per hour of 28,800. The Rolex uses the Rolex in-house Caliber 3000, has a power reserve of 42 hours and a BPH of 28,800. And the last thing that I'll say is the finishing on both of them do seem to mirror each other. They both have high polished sides on the cases and on the bracelets. The tops of the case are all brushed, but then they have a high polished bezel to add a little bit of interest to the top. And here is a quick lume comparison of the Tudor against the Rolex Explorer 14270. This is before they lumed any of the numerals. You can see that the Tudor just beats the crap out of the Rolex, but the Rolex is still very respectable, easy to read the time, good to get orientation, but the Tudor just beats it to death. The Tudor is insane with its lume. It works so incredibly well. And now for the wrist shots of these watches, and first up is the Black Bay 36. I absolutely adore this watch on my wrist. I love the 36mm case. To me, comparing this to the Explorer, it is a little bit beefier, it is a little bit more masculine, but still I love the Explorer. But here is how the Black Bay 36 looks on my 18-ish centimeter wrist as the camera goes slightly out of focus. And here's a quick look at the Explorer on my wrist. I think this is a nearly perfectly sized watch for me. It fits really well across the wrist. I do have a thicker wrist in terms of height, but in terms of a cross, I think this is a nearly perfect fit. Now let's discuss the drawbacks of both watches. We'll start with the Tudor, and the first drawback here has to be the movement. I know a lot of people care a lot about in-house movements. This is essentially just an off-the-shelf movement. That can be a pro or a con, but if you are somebody who really wants a watch with an in-house movement, you're not going to be getting that out of the Tudor. Also, with the bracelet, if you have a wrist more than 18 centimeters, I think you're going to need to order extra links, and I'm also not the biggest fan of the limited micro adjustment. It makes it a little bit difficult to get a perfect fit, but with a watch this small, it's not the biggest deal if it's a little bit loose. Also, with a thickness of 10.2 millimeters, that's amazing, but it does have this slab-sided design, so it does wear a little bit thicker than that. And the last thing is the 19mm lugs. That is kind of a pain in the butt. I do think the proportions are really nice on this, so I understand why they did it. But as far as changing straps, it can be a little bit of a pain. I found a 20mm Perlon works great, or I was able to find this really nice 19mm single pass NATO strap from Crown and Buckle, I think. So there are options, it's just a little bit limiting there. Then when we get to the Rolex, the main drawback for most people is going to be the bracelet for these vintage models. It feels very dated, jingly and jangly, and not super high quality compared to what's available now. Also, when we put the watches right next to each other, I do find the Rolex to be slightly less legible than the Tudor, but that's because the Tudor is so incredibly bold with the markers and the handset. It just pops, you could see it from a mile away. I'm not saying the Rolex is poorly legible though, but in comparison, the Tudor wins out in legibility. And the final drawback for the Rolex does have to be the availability and the price. If you're trying to buy a modern Explorer from your local authorized dealer, it's going to be very difficult and there will be an extremely long wait. So if you want to get something quick, you're going to have to pay gray market prices, which are extremely inflated. And then as far as the price, as I mentioned, the Tudor is about half the price of the Rolex Explorer. So if you want to get multiple dial colors with the Tudor, you could get two of them for the price of one Rolex Explorer, and then you would have a black dial and a blue dial just for different occasions. You could even get a two-watch collection. You could get the Black Bay 36 and the Black Bay 58 for about the price of a modern Rolex Explorer. But with that being said, if the watch that you truly want is the Explorer, it's just a little bit too expensive right now, or it's unavailable right now, I would say hold off and wait and save a bit more, because I don't think the Black Bay 36 is a proper alternative for that watch. If you get one of these, you will still be wanting to see what the Explorer is all about. That's the last thing I'll say about it. And that's pretty much all that I have for this video. I'm pretty sure I covered everything in the overhead shot. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Between these two watches, which one do you like better? Do you like the modern Tudor Black Bay 36 or the vintage Rolex Explorer? Let me know which one you would pick. If you found this fun, interesting, or helpful, I'm just doing my podcastage outro this time. This is ridiculous. I just get in these routines where I just say the same thing over and over and over again. I don't know why I do it. I know what to say when I do that. If I don't do that, I don't know what to say. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. That's the moral of the story. If you hate this video, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. And then YouTube will stop recommending you my videos. That's what the thumbs down is for. You can subscribe for more of these, and I'm still waiting on that experiment. See if my face being in the video impacts YouTube's desire or ability to monetize me. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks. I'm not going to do it. I did that in my... Okay, I was signing off. I'm going to share this story with you. I was in college. I was in the front row of my music class, and my professor said something, okay, this report's going to be due in 2 weeks. But without thinking, I watch way too many movies. I love Total Recall. There's a scene where Arnold is a woman, and he starts saying, 2 weeks. He puts his mouth and his hands in his mouth and starts pulling on his face. I did that in my class without thinking about it. I'm a complete idiot. What are you going to do?